Some big news dropping from Ryder Cup Europe this morning. Henrik Stenson's tenure as the 2023 European Ryder Cup captain is now over. A few hours ago, Ryder Cup Europe released a statement saying, quote, Ryder Cup Europe today confirms that Henrik Stenson's tenure as captain of Team Europe for the 2023 Ryder Cup at Marco Simone Golf and Country Club in Rome, Italy, has been brought to an end with immediate effect. In light of decisions made by Henrik in relation to his personal circumstances, it has become clear he will not be able to fulfill certain contractual obligations to Ryder Cup Europe that he had committed to prior to his announcement as captain back on Tuesday, March 15th, earlier this year. It is therefore not possible for him to continue in the role of captain. Confirmation of the new 2023 European Ryder Cup captain will be made in due course. Ryder Cup Europe will be making no further comment on any aspect of the process until that time. So with that, hello and welcome into Golf Today. I'm George Savaricas alongside Damon Hack. More chaos in the world of golf, and you didn't think the ripple effects would ultimately affect the captaincy of Henrik Stenson in Team Europe in the Ryder Cup, but that's where we land now, Damon.
Even the captaincy, one of the great honors in our sport, is not exempt from this fracturing at the top levels of professional golf. And there are a couple stories here. I'm struck by the strength of the word, stripped of his captaincy, relieved of his duties. And Henrik Stenson, a five-time player who back in March talked about the honor and this is for all the Swedes who preceded me, how proud he was, how humbled he was, and for how that storyline shifts for him being removed of this, some would call it a lifetime dream to be a Ryder Cup captain. And now Europe has to find someone else. And for the sanctity of this event, which has been called the Super Bowl of golf, it's a gut punch on this Wednesday.
Obviously, the rumors are Henrik Stenson is going to LIV Golf. That hasn't been confirmed yet by LIV Golf or Stenson, but you would think the first domino to fall, him being stripped of his captaincy, has to be because of pending moves in that direction. If you look at the story, and to give it some layers of context to where it's unfolded now, Henrik Stenson publicly had lost millions with the fraudster financier Alan Stanford, who's in prison for a Ponzi scheme that totaled $7 billion. Stenson publicly stated that he lost around $8 million investing through Stanford in 2009, who was a sponsor on the PGA Tour and LPGA Tour at that time. Stenson subsequently, recovered, winning the FedEx Cup and the Race to Dubai in the same season in 2013. Yeah. By all accounts, a very well-received peer in Europe and over here in the U.S. and in our media dealings is a great guy from a personality standpoint. Yeah. So had a pretty sterling reputation in the world of golf. Yeah. But clearly money talks. The offer had to have been something so financially astounding that he couldn't turn down. And I think this was a strategic strike by Greg Norman, potentially, and LIV Golf to go after the European Ryder Cup captain, because this doesn't have to do with what Stenson has done with his clubs in the last couple of years.
He's 4 of his last 6 cuts. He's almost of that age. Westwood, Poulter, Keimer, Garcia, Casey, McDowell, and now Stenson. You were talking about the Lions in winter of the European Tour, players who carried the European Ryder Cup team on its shoulders. And listen, make no mistake, Henrik talked about the significance of the appointment. I want to go back to some of the words he said back in March, because they were very, very strong about the humbleness of the honor, standing on the shoulders of people who were before him. He was asked about these breakaway circuits, and he said, listen, there's been a lot of speculations back and forth. As I have said, I am fully committed to the captaincy and to Ryder Cup Europe and the job at hand. So we're going to keep busy with that. I'm going to do everything in my power to deliver a winning team in Rome. More from Henrik back in March.
Some of my greatest moments have been with the team at the Ryder Cup, and winning, losing, the joy, the defeats, anything that goes with it. It's a fantastic event, and it's always been a huge honor to put that shirt on for Europe, and to now sit here as the Ryder Cup captain is it's even bigger, I feel. So huge honor. No, I have to say this is beyond my wildest dreams and expectations. I remember watching Seve and Olasabal in the Ryder Cup at the Belfry back in the day, and just thinking of the possibility of playing in the Ryder Cup. And I had my debut in 2006 at the K Club, and then been part of Team Europe on and off for the next near enough 20 years. So to sit here now as the captain, it's certainly the full circle, and something I couldn't have envisioned back in the day. So yeah, dreams do come true.
Couldn't have envisioned it back in the day, rocking that European Ryder Cup crest on his chest, and talking about his first Ryder Cup in 2006 at the K Club and all those moments with his teammates. It's not like he didn't know back in March. I mean, he's the one who shot down the rumors. What's changed since then?
I would assume the amount of zeros that were on the offer from LIV Golf. It has to be what changed at the last minute. I'm also a little confused here. Well, if you parse through the language in the Team Europe statement, basically, stripping him of the captaincy, which is backboned, obviously, by the DP World Tour. They control Team Europe. It says contractual obligations. So it seems like there was some type of understanding through the Ryder Cup that Henrik Stenson would not potentially join a breakaway circuit, a.k.a. LIV Golf. But there was clearly a lot of smoke, and his name was right there with Lee Westwood, Ian Poulter,
the profile.
Graham McDowell. All those guys, Martin Keimer, were in the same rumor mill. So it almost seemed like a stopgap in the first place. It was confusing to us to have him as the captain when you thought, well, okay, you're going up against an unlimited bankroll. There could be a certain breaking point where the offer is just too enticing.
Isn't the captaincy lucrative as well, and the opportunities to lead Team Europe and the speaking engagements and the corporate circuit and just the honor of, I mean, listen, Rory's tears and Olafable dancing and Sergio, running down the fairway, and Seve and Faldo, these two bitter rivals embracing in '95 in tears. I mean, like, what are we supposed to think as the golf fan? Does it mean more to the fan than it does to the player? I mean, this is a blow on this day, I think. As someone who has covered this game and covered this event and looked at the captains on either side with great respect and honor, and Steve Stricker crying in Wisconsin, this is a blow today.
Oh, it's a substantial blow. I completely agree. I don't know that it means more to the fans than the players, talking with guys who have experienced the Ryder Cup and talking with retired players.
Yeah.
Their memories generally go back to the Ryder Cup. Who I beat, who I played with, what the team room was like, how many Ryder Cups I won, what was the most memorable. It's not often that you're hearing an individual achievement. It's usually the Ryder Cup stories are the ones that they share among their peers and with us. It is definitely a blow. Where does the DP World Tour go from here with the next captain? They've lost 7 guys who were integral to the last 20 years of success with the Ryder Cup.
And for Henrik, it's not even the fact that we don't know for sure that he's going, but the speculation that he will. It's that he's going back on his word, too.
Yes.
I can't help but think about one of my favorite movies, Jerry Maguire. Tell me you didn't sign. Tell me you didn't sign, because I believed your words. My handshake is stronger than oak. I mean, tell me you didn't sign. I can't help but feel a little bit bamboozled by the strength of his words back in March.
That's the part that is not going to sit well with golf fans, especially those in Europe. It would have been one thing if the first week of March he said, hey, this would be a high honor.
It's going back on the word.
Honestly, I don't think that I'm going to be able to say no to this offer. But clearly, at the time, that's what he believed. 120 days later, very different story.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, so let's welcome in Shane Ryan, author most recently of the Ryder Cup book, The Cup They Couldn't Lose. Shane, clearly a lot to get to. With the Henrik Stenson news, your initial reaction to this?
Yeah, you guys covered it so well. On a personal front, it was heartbreaking because for all the years I've covered golf, not as many as you guys, but it's been a decade at this point. I've always found Henrik Stenson to be really witty, really funny, a really kind person. And in your head, you want to think there's a guy who's not going to do it. He's not going to go for that brass ring. But there it is. And the thing that is flabbergasting about this is back in February, when the European Ryder Cup Selection Committee was choosing its captain, you had guys like Westwood and Poulter who knew they were going to go, and they gave excuses like, well, I want to work on my game, and this is not the time for me to be Ryder Cup captain. They said that because they didn't want to be considered, because they knew that what happened to Stenson was going to happen to them. Somehow what Stenson did, I think, is far worse, where he took it. I don't know the exact contractual details of what he signed, but clearly he was in breach of, at the very least, a verbal agreement. I'm not going to go to the LIV Tour. He signed that. He became the face of the European Ryder Cup for this cycle, and then he went back on them. And I got to tell you guys, it's so bad. George, you mentioned that, well, at the time, this is what he thought. I can tell you, from some of my sources, that the Europeans, they don't know this, but they're wondering, did he just accept the Ryder Cup job as a leverage, basically, knowing that LIV is going to want to come after the European Tour, and if I take this job, they're going to pay me more money, and so by doing this, I can up my eventual pay. Again, that is not confirmed, but this is how strained the relationship is right now, that people are talking that way. Did we just get really, really played?
Well, on that note, Shane, the Ryder Cup is an institution in our game. It will go on. It's been called the Super Bowl of our sport. But how much of a blow is this to all the powerful symbolism that the Ryder Cup evokes?
Yeah, and, I think you guys nailed this, too, which is that's part of the reason LIV did it, right? It's almost like a virus. They're not just trying to start a rival golf league. They're really going for the kill on these big institutions, whether it's in the European Tour, the PGA Tour. Of course, the PGA of America is roped into this. Now, as to the practical effect, I personally don't think that when you get to Marco Simone next fall, I don't think people are really going to care. I don't think they're going to be like, well, can't watch this Ryder Cup because it's, Henrik Stenson made a fool of them and has no status anymore. I think it'll be just fine. I know there'll be a lot of, disappointed Swedish fans and Nordic fans in general that this happened. But I think, the average rank and file fan by that time is going to forget about it. And this is not going to be a huge blow to the Ryder Cup itself. Certainly not as big as, the players that you want to see who have jumped ship and who won't be there.
I mean, what type of reckoning do you think this is happening now within Team Europe from the elder statesmen to have lost all these notable names that we already mentioned on the show, and now they kind of have to regroup and figure out, okay, well, who's next to ascend to that role, and would they fall susceptible to the same thing that just unfolded?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the next choice they make is going to be a safer choice. You could pin some of the blame on Team Europe for this one, right? You took a risk with Henrik Stenson. There was always the risk that something like this would happen. I think if you had picked Luke Donald from the beginning, you would not be worrying about this. And so, I think your next pick is going to be somebody like Donald. He was in the running the first time. He was probably a very close second to Stenson. Other names like Thomas Bjorn may want another bite at the apple. Eduardo Molinari is already a vice captain. He's got the Italy connection. I think their next choice is going to be between those three. And I think they're all safe from the LIV Golf allure, unless LIV Golf is going to get extra sadistic and say, okay, Eduardo Molinari, here's 40 million pounds. Come play with us. We just want to hurt the Ryder Cup any way we can. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the next captain will stick.
Shane, from the outside, we've marveled at the cohesion of this European team for the last 20 years. How much a part of the Ryder Cup Europe machinery was Henrik as a five-time player, as an assistant captain?
Yeah, and the irony of that hasn't escaped me, Damon. I mean, we've heard forever, and I think I believed it, that, the Americans want to win, but they don't care. They don't have the passion that the Europeans have. Poulter, Westwood, Henrik Stenson, they're all gone. They're all gone. If things stand, they're never going to be Ryder Cup captains. The Americans, other than Patrick Reed, are not gone. And so, yeah, there's something really strange about that. And I can tell you that Stenson was a really big part of it. He was, a great teammate with Justin Rose. Of course, that partnership is one of the most successful ever for Team Europe. He was just always an instrumental role. Everybody likes him. He was a team guy. There's really no sugarcoating this one. I think maybe if you don't like LIV Golf, you would want to say, well, Henrik Stenson wasn't that big a deal. No, I mean, everybody liked him. Journalists liked him, obviously, as we're talking about it, and it's bad.
Let's get into the dollars and cents. The kind of financial opportunity gained by Henrik Stenson potentially, obviously, with LIV Golf. We haven't seen what that amounts to. The financial opportunity lost as far as what he could have made from endorsements, appearance fees at events. Do you have any idea what that ballpark is? And then also, we saw the PGA Tour's response to LIV Golf, how they're upping purses and trying to match, and at least to some degree, what the purses are there. Do you think the economic structure with how players are compensated for the Ryder Cup could potentially change in the future?
Here's the thing. I'm only repeating numbers I've heard in the British press, but what I'm hearing is minimum 30 million pounds. So I'm bad at translation, but maybe $40 million, maximum of about $50 million or more. No matter what the level of compensation changes, and I think in all levels, the PGA Tour is trying to do this. Probably the Ryder Cup players deserve to make money, right? We're watching it because of them. It's a huge, lucrative event. They probably deserve a cut. But you're not going to, if you're Henrik Stenson, you're not going to make $40 million playing in the Ryder Cup for a guy who's kind of over the hill, playing wise and doesn't command really like this huge audience or anything like that. That is the fundamental imbalance here. No matter what incremental changes the quote unquote good guys make, the Saudis can go and say, here from our public investment fund is $50 million, and nobody can match that. And they know that they're not doing this to make a profit. They know they're overpaying him. They're doing this for the symbolism of it and to win in the long run. So that's the problem here. It's not an equal playing field at all.
And therefore, the Ryder Cup not exempt from the fracturing at the top levels of professional golf. Shane, thanks for hopping on. We appreciate a few minutes. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you a lot, guys. Always fun.
Appreciate it, Shane.
Let's take a closer look at Henrik Stenson's numbers the last few seasons. 36 starts, not a top 10 finish on the PGA Tour. He's missed 22 cuts. So if he does go to this rival circuit, George, it's not like he's bringing a lot of game at this point in his career.
You can clearly tell that he's more towards the sunset in his career than the peak that we saw 6 years ago when he won the Open.
No doubt.